I'm sure at this point, most of us have taken an Uber or Lyft or have been in some sort of rideshare vehicle. But what happens when you're involved in an accident, when you're a passenger in one of these rideshare vehicles, or maybe you're hit by a rideshare vehicle, or maybe you drive for Uber or Lyft? Well, in this video, I'm going to touch on those three areas so that you know what your rights are if you're involved in a motor vehicle accident. So if you're involved in an accident with an Uber or Lyft driver who is not yet logged into their app to begin their shift that day, then their own personal policy applies only. The policy for Uber or Lyft does not come into play. So let's say an Uber or Lyft driver is getting ready to maybe take a ride at their next stop, but have not logged into the app yet, and they hit your car, then their personal auto policy applies in that situation. In a second scenario, if the driver is logged into the app and is waiting on an assignment and they're involved in a motor vehicle accident that's their fault, then generally their personal auto policy applies as a primary policy, and the Uber or Lyft policy applies as a secondary policy, but generally at a lower limit than if, for example, they had a passenger in their vehicle. So there is some potential there for Uber or Lyft to be involved as far as the insurance coverage goes. However, the limits wouldn't be as high as if they do have a passenger. So this leads me to the third scenario. So when an Uber or Lyft driver accepts a ride, then the commercial type policy of Uber and Lyft becomes primary, and they have a higher policy limit value in that scenario. So this means from the time the Uber or Lyft driver accepts a ride, all during the point where they pick the passenger up and then drop them off at their destination. If there's a motor vehicle accident during that time, that's the Uber or Lyft driver's fault. The Uber or Lyft policy is primary, and that's when you're bumped up to the commercial type liability policy limits. If you are a passenger in a vehicle and it's another vehicle's fault for causing the accident, then obviously it's the other vehicle's third-party auto insurance liability limits that are available to you. As far as any underinsured or uninsured coverage available, your personal policy, if you have any underinsured or uninsured coverage available on your own personal policy, that would apply because your insurance follows you for the UM/UIM portion of your policy limits. Unfortunately, these rideshare companies got rid of carrying underinsured or uninsured coverage for any passengers and even their drivers if there's a motor vehicle accident. There is what's called medical payments coverage typically, but that's usually a pretty small amount. But just so you're aware, the underinsured, uninsured policy limits are a thing of the past. And so again, like I always say, the best way to protect yourself, even if you're in a rideshare type accident, is to carry your own great coverage. So make sure you have that UM/UIM, uninsured, underinsured motor vehicle coverage for any accident you're involved in. And in the last scenario, if you are an Uber or Lyft or rideshare driver, it's really important to know kind of what coverages are available to you as well and when your own personal policy would apply. So again, like I mentioned before, if it's a scenario where you haven't activated the app yet, but you're in an accident that's your fault, then your own auto insurance coverage, your own liability limits would be available to protect you. Of course, if you're hit by another driver that's at fault for the accident, then their liability limits would apply. And then if you're involved in an accident where you're on your way to pick up a passenger or you're transporting a passenger, if you've accepted an assignment, then Uber or Lyft's policies will protect you if you're at fault for the accident. But just like your passengers, Uber and Lyft and these rideshare companies got rid of the uninsured, underinsured coverage for even their drivers as well as passengers. And so it's really important, especially with the amount of driving you're doing on the road, is to get your own coverage. And also you need to let your insurance company know that you are driving for Uber and Lyft or a rideshare company if you're planning to get this extra coverage as well, because they can deny coverage to you if you didn't let them know that you were driving for a rideshare company and then you're involved in an accident and try to utilize the coverage. So as you can see, there's many considerations when the accident involves some sort of Uber, Lyft, or rideshare driver or company. Please give us a call whether you're injured by someone who's a rideshare driver, Whether you are a passenger in a vehicle of a rideshare company or whether you drive for a rideshare company, we're happy to take a look at any coverages or consult you on your case. Please give us a call at 702-381-8888.